Hello, everyone. Good evening if you're in India. Good morning or good afternoon if you're in Europe or the US. We've been having a wonderful last 4 days here, right, discussing how to remain anti-fragile. And I think one of the things that even Sanjay and Jim mentioned is using technology to actually remain anti-fragile. But the irony of the fact remains that recession or not, I think that's exactly what has remained fragile over the last 2 years, right? We've had cybersecurity incidents every now and then, including, so in fact, I know of this billion-dollar firm which had a cybersecurity incident just about last year, and they couldn't even take a printout. A simple printout for a fortnight was disabled for them because of that cybersecurity incident. And if you look at something even closer, for example, in Twitter about just about last week, you saw some of the verified personalities accounts getting hacked, and these were and these were personalities such as Elon Musk, such as Barack Obama. I mean, thankfully, it was used for a relatively silly scam which they were running for Bitcoin. But it can, but such an incident could have actually triggered a world war, right? So there were a lot of things that could have happened in this scenario, and this kind of escalates right now because most of us are working from home. So for Twitter, for example, whatever news that is coming out so far, it seems that the hackers got access to the employee to the employee systems, and as most of us now are working from home, and I'm working, and even now, right now, for example, I am on a home Wi-Fi, and for all you know, the password for the home Wi-Fi right now is 1234556, right? So it becomes more and more difficult for cybersecurity experts as we move from work from home. So Krishna, I'd want to start off with you. As an organization that has enabled us to work from home, and in fact even help us hold this conference, for those of you who do not know, this runs on a WebEx as a backend, right? So Krishna, how do you actually, how do you view the cybersecurity challenge, right? It's going to be massive. So what is your views on that?
Before I start on the cybersecurity challenge, you have to understand how enterprise networks have been deployed for the last few decades. It has been deployed with perimeter security, right? You have users working in or campuses. You have applications hosted in the data center, and perimeter is secure using firewalls, using IPSs, all the devices, all the security devices. So the internet connection used to be you go from the branch to the data center and then break out from the data center for internet connectivity. This is how enterprise networks have been deployed for decades. Now, with the ubiquity of connectivity and cloud enabling applications and elasticity of demand, pay as you grow, any of those concepts, right? Because of that, enterprises want to utilize the cloud as well as users want to utilize the ubiquity of connectivity. So then the perimeter, one part of application perimeter got dissolved because applications moved. Some portion of the applications are in the data center, some portions are moved to the cloud. Users, where they are working from, they are not working from offices anymore. They started working from houses and they travel from hotels and any other places. So, and they used to connect to the corporate VPN, connect out into the data center and be part of the corporate network. The third one that actually changed the game or made it a bigger challenge was the whole concept of I want to work anywhere, but I want to connect to the application without going to the corporate network. That actually created the biggest problem for enterprises as a cybersecurity challenge. Till customers came into the corporate network and then went out, there were only few places where they could break out of. But today you look at it, you are sitting and working from home, and you are able to connect to your corporate application in the cloud, but you don't go through the corporate VPN. That changed the whole mechanism of how networks are deployed and also put a huge stress on the cybersecurity. What happened with the pandemic? Many organizations were at different stages of this migration, enabling workers to work from different places, moving applications from data center to cloud, that was a slow transition. And they were also tying it with the digital transformation that they were doing. The pandemic hit us. In 5 months, we've seen people, everybody working from home, but you can't wait for everybody to go to corporate network, corporate VPN to go access cloud or applications. That put a huge change in the way they are implementing security. And there comes the zero trust security, whether you're in the network, outside the network. I'm not going to trust your device or the device posture, and my policies for access has to be the same across whether you're coming in through the corporate network or you go straight to the cloud. So many organizations, we've enabled many organizations in a span of weeks to enable, thousands or tens of thousands of employees to change the way they work, change the way their policies are built, change the way the access are being built. And it has been a phenomenal journey for us to learn every day and incorporate and drive. So I would say this is the transformation that has happened, and it has been a hell of a ride.
Interesting, Krishna. I think, of course. Now, you threw in a few jargons there, something like zero trust. A dummy like me does not understand. So, Hrishikesh, somebody who's researched this for a good part of your life, and you run an organization which does that same. What is zero trust? How would you explain it to a dummy like me?
Yeah. So first off, I thank you for the invitation. And second, see, zero trust is to some extent is a negative word. So it's one way of saying that you are not trusting anyone, which is what the English says, and which is what the definition says. Now, the interesting part over here, and as we are trying to talk about how to build a real security moat of the data and the computations that are happening in the cloud today, more so after the COVID-19 pandemic. So the important point here is that when we talk of zero trust, are we talking about not trusting the cloud computing center, where your data is getting hosted, where your computations are going on? Say, for example, the public cloud. Now, we as a company in Zero Labs and a few other companies like us across the globe, very few in number, we work in order to solve that particular problem, where we take it as a consideration that the cloud computing is set up, or the systems that are there in the cloud computer, they are also an adversary. So which means that when you store data in the cloud computing setup, in the cloud computing storage, like for example S3 like storage, or when you are processing or doing AI ML on top of data or running a Spark program in a cloud computing setup, how do you enable that even the cloud computer or the people who are managing the cloud do not have access to the data that you are storing, retrieving, and even running queries or processing AI ML functions. So, so zero trust, in a sense, will mean, therefore, right from believing or not believing the cloud, and if on not believing the cloud, how do you design techniques that can eliminate such kind of risks? Now, what the interesting thing that comes out from there is that if you develop a system like this where your data and the computation happening on the cloud cannot be hacked, or even if it is hacked, it does not carry any meaning because it is ciphertext, then what really happens is that you do not have to deploy software to measure zero trust. So that problem is entirely solved. And the second thing is that you do not have to worry about. You could have a very good night's sleep because you know that the data that you are storing, they are all in an encrypted form. So essentially, to build, we feel, and that is what we work with multiple different kinds of Fortune 100 companies and trying to solve this particular problem on storing, retrieving data in a completely encrypted form. So that is our take as an organization on zero trust.
Sure. Makes sense. Makes sense. So, but I'm intrigued by the scale point here. So Ashish, you run the CTO organization of a huge consumer organization which is spread across 200 countries in the world. So, how do you view scale, right, as a challenge when such cybersecurity things? I mean, I understand portions of what Shikesh mentioned, that it requires a lot of new deployments when you go in such a scenario. So as an organization from your side, how do you see doing that things at a scale? What the challenges have been for you?
Thanks, Vimal. So as a global company, MasterCard, we are committed to fostering a culture of decency. And we have always supported flexibility for our employees and for their ability to work remotely. However, during these past few months, COVID-19 has forced everyone to work remotely all the time. The network connections that used to take place when people were in office, of course, had the benefit of being validated to our secure network, to our secure corporate network that Krishna spoke about earlier. Now that employees are not automatically inside our trusted network by being in the office, connecting to us means they need to prove who they are more often. So we talked about zero trust policy. Both Krishna and Rishikesh did a great job explaining what it is. Again, simple terms, Vimal, you asked the question. So if I have a MasterCard issued laptop, I'm working from home, I power on the laptop, I cannot get online, even if just to look at a news website, until I have securely identified myself to the MasterCard VPN. So we apply the zero trust philosophy to secure, just like we secure our payments network and our customer data. As you know, MasterCard's philosophy, safe, simple, and smart. We apply the same principles to our workforce and the corporate infrastructure. So today, there's still some work to be done. Today, employees experience a certain level of friction. We are on a journey to remove passwords and replace them with other authentication methods. For example, we are enhancing our security by requiring additional authentication. This will be performed by validating with something you have, like a token. All of us are familiar with that. With something that you are, that is your biometric, versus, which is a current process, something you know your password. And you referred Vimal earlier because passwords are inherently insecure. And I hope you haven't set your password as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we are working to deploy authentication solutions that provide users with faster responses and lower fees. For example, if a user makes an access request on the laptop, their phone may require them to validate it with a biometric. When possible, authentication will be passive and users won't even know it's. And you talked about scale. As we deploy at scale, we have to keep a balance between employee experience. I will also add that this crisis has certainly brought these two pieces, the security and the employee digital experience, and the teams that work on it very close together. They've always been strong partners, but they are now more in lockstep than ever before. I'll give you a tangible example. In response to this crisis and how we've been working, we have pivoted very quickly from using on-prem VPNs to cloud-based VPNs. I believe Krishna talked about the conventional method of everything coming back to the data center and then goes out. A cloud-based VPN allows us to sort of solve some of that problem. It simplifies and enhances the employee experience by giving them faster access to internet-based services, especially software as a service, SaaS services, while allowing us to maintain our security posture.
Got it. Sure, Ashish. So I think what also intrigues me is that as a large organization which deals with financial data, especially of consumers like me and the several others. So I just wanted to understand, and maybe I'll point this at Rishikesh again, because from a technology perspective, so when the personal data of such volumes is being exchanged, and so at over unsecured Wi-Fi networks or whatever, despite tokens, how can we ensure that this doesn't fall into wrong hands? Is there some kind of encryption that's possible? Is there some hardware, software? So how do you deal with it? Hrishikesh, I think was
Okay,
pointed to
you
you.
ask me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so see, I mean, there are three steps of data. In the life cycle. One is when the data is transmitted from point A to point B. Then the data is stored somewhere, for example, in a cloud storage system or in your hard drive. And the third is when the data is processed. So if you see the evolution of cryptography or the evolution of different kinds of encryption techniques that has been developed so far, the first two things, the transfer of data from point A to point B, is more or less a solved problem in the sense that you have a very well-known set of algorithms, and these algorithms exist since 1976, right from when Diffie-Hellman came out with the key exchange algorithm. And there are a lot of innovations that have happened on the way, which secures your data when you move from point A to point B. The second thing, so if you are using honest cryptography, so honest cryptography means cryptographic systems where the keys are honestly generated. If you are not generating keys honestly, either of the parties, and they are doing not a good job while generating the keys, etc., then of course there is a problem. But having said that, if you use the standard libraries to generate keys and then vetted libraries to do this stuff, then the encryption takes care of the data that gets transferred from point A to point B. In case of storing the data in a storage system, there also a lot of inventions have happened since the last 25 years. For example, there is something called Advanced Encryption Standard (XTS) techniques. Right now, as we speak, the key size that is recommended by NIST is 256 bit, which is a fairly good secure system. So when you transfer data from A to B and when you store it in the hard drive or in the storage system, it is good. It is good enough that your security is taken care of. The problem really happens, and this is where the gap is when the data comes and then they reside in the primary memory, so that you are now trying to execute queries on the data. So there, it's very difficult to protect the data. Now, if you see the current set of database systems that were designed, in order to produce high true output, a lot of data resides in the primary memory. And a lot of these systems are designed today that does not take account of secondary memory at all. They're all primary memory databases. So therefore, it becomes paramount that when you design a system in such a way that the data in the primary memory also remains encrypted. And you do not require decryption to work on top of that. And now, fortunately, some of the techniques in this area has become, I would not say mainstream, but they have become popular slowly and gradually. Fully homomorphic in encryption is one of them. Secure multi-party computation is another. Differential privacy is another. And some of the decent hardware from Intel, etc., which allows you to do secure computing. So the technology is evolving, and we hope that maybe in a couple of years from now, a couple of months from now, organizations will adopt techniques that not only will have perimeter security, but will also have zero trust on the hardware on which the computation is running. So
Got it.
this is how it is evolving.
Sure. It makes a lot of sense. And sticking on with the technology theme here, if I move back to Ashish, I think I remember when blockchain just came out, and they said for a financial firms, this is the most secure kind of an environment. This is the most secure technology that has to come out. And so, do you think the current environment that we are in, would the acceptance or implementation of technologies like blockchain accelerate? What's your opinion on that, Ashish?
Yeah, no, great question, Vimal. And by the way, Rishikesh, that was a very great, simple explanation of technology. So first of all, let me, before I get into the question of blockchain and other technologies, what have you been seeing, as a global payments network? The acceleration of the move to digital in these past few months has been unprecedented. We have always, as MasterCard, we believe and we've talked about sort of moving away from cash to digital payments, and we have seen, while the online world and the online payments, digital payments have existed now for quite a while. What has been different now is the pace of change. So the replacement of cash by digital payments, I believe, will become now faster. As one data point, the online payments, we have seen that it has surpassed in-store payments for the first time in the first quarter of 2020. The scale of the shift and the likely permanence. Now, many of the audience may be from India, and sometime back, when the demonetization happened, we saw a similar spurt of moving to online and digital payments, and then sort of it plateaued and perhaps came back to some of the pre-demonetization numbers. But in this case, I do believe, given the scope and scale of what has happened, there will probably be a likely permanence of what we are seeing right now. So things like, a tap on a contactless terminal, a swipe on an e-commerce site, or a click to pay from your phone or your laptop. These are all behaviors that are powered by digital. And many of these spending behaviors that have been sparked off by this COVID-19 crisis, like I said before, would be likely to stick. And these consumers will likely seek out businesses best prepared for this digital first future. So with that, certainly, the underlying technology plays a big part in making this seamless and smooth. So it has this digital shift by what we are seeing has also spurred some of our blockchain activity. You may have seen our recent announcements where we have declared our acceleration of the CryptoCard program, making it easier for consumers to hold and activate cryptocurrency. Now, to be clear, we are not running any cryptocurrencies on our network. Currency will always enter MasterCard's network as traditional currency, what we're used to. But through the CryptoCard program, consumers can instantly convert their cryptocurrencies into traditional currencies, which can then be spent everywhere MasterCard is accepted around the world.
Got it.
Also, if I may, many people think of MasterCard, when we think about payments, we think about credit cards. These past few years, what has changed is also we have added the account to account, the bank account side of the rails onto our network. And along with these two rails, the card and account to account network, we believe blockchain is a powerful third rail and a transformative technology that has the potential to extend far beyond the cryptocurrency with power. So our participations in these initiatives are guided again by the same principles we apply to our own networks. They must provide strong consumer protection, including privacy and security of the consumer's information and transactions. Rishikesh talked about some of the ways in which that happens. We want to deliver a level playing field for all stakeholders, including but not limited to financial institutions, merchants, mobile network operators, to contribute and benefit from the blockchain network. And this entire ecosystem has to operate in full compliance with all applicable laws and regulations, including those applicable to anti-money laundering and consistent with the economic systems of the countries the network operates. Hope that helps.
Sure. Makes sense. So, yeah. So, Krishna, if I come back to you, and if I refer to Hrishikesh's conversation about how things are going. And if I heard his measures correctly, I think he mentioned hardware once and software some 5 times. And as an organization that pioneered enterprise grade networking systems, especially networking hardware for the 2 decades, and that was your bread and butter business. And now when you see most of the networking actually moving on the software rather than hardware, what's the challenges that you see on that side of things from a cybersecurity perspective?
So I talked about the borderless network, right? And as you deploy more and more borderless networks, and as customers, as users want to use from the cloud, applications delivered from the cloud from anywhere, you're going to see an increase in usage of virtual form factor of our switches and routers and firewalls and all the things that we have always delivered over the last two decades or so. So there's not a whole lot of difference from the way we approach the software that runs on the hardware versus what happens on the virtual form factor, right? But for the hardware related pieces have this ability to to restrict access. You can store it, secure it, and you can restrict access. But the overall tenets have been about how do we make it a trusted device, whether it is a hardware device or it is delivered as a virtual form factor. Now, the trust comes what are the techniques, right? One is the image secure, so that nobody you can't bring in a counterfeit images. So we've incorporated things like image signing, the integrity of the image, basically testing for vulnerabilities, making sure all those patches are in place, right? The other one is the access to the image, roles, responsibilities, how you provide access to the image. It's very common with versus hardware versus software, but in the virtual world, it's a lot more important. Because it is out there and anybody can access it, you have to make sure all the roles and responsibilities and the access privileges are protected. The other one in the virtual form factor is the ability to store whatever configurations and other information that are there. How are you enabling them to be stored in secure vaults, right? And what happens when the device is compromised? So here is where we bring in controller architectures to make sure that we are able to quarantine the compromised device, virtual form factor device, and we are able to take it out of the disengage and disconnect it out of the network. So again, similar principles that you would do with a hardware versus software, but the management of it and how do you work on it is slightly different in the cloud world or in the virtual form factor world.
Makes sense. So while I have a bunch of more questions, and I have got only wiser in the last 30 minutes, and I can continue for an hour. But I think Nivedita is just asking me to say that she's mentioning a time check here. So Nivedita, any questions from the audience, or is it time up for us?
Unfortunately, yes, it's time up and we'll have to move on with the next section. But thank you so much, Vimal, and the rest of the panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashish. Thanks, Krishna. Thanks, Hrishikesh. Thank you so much.